Okay, now for something completely different. This 55 Chrysler is loaded with chrome. All inside the dashboard, all the knobs, the heater controls, even on the outside of the car. A lot of chrome. And a lot of it's pot metal. Door handles. A lot of, just I'd say 75% of it's pot metal. And it's all bad, it's all pitted. So, I've read some about plating, and I think, man, I have got to figure out a way to lower the cost of getting all this stuff plated. It's no telling what it would cost for an electroplater professional to do this stuff. Probably more than the rest of the car. So I said, I'm going to try it. And so these are some door handles, window handles that were definitely not going to be used. So I used those as guinea pigs. I've actually got another one over here in a nickel bath right now, running some more experiments. So I took these and I sandblasted them down to what I thought was pot metal, but now I don't think it is. And I first attempted this one, for instance. I first attempted to plate it simply by just using some, actually I used some muriatic acid and, stirred it up in some water. And what the muriatic acid does, it takes off, it starts eating into the metal. I'll get back again. I think what I was sandblasting down to is actually the nickel finish that was on it already. And so that muriatic acid bath, it didn't do anything but eat the metal up. So I sandblasted it again. Now I know I'm down to real pot metal. And I'm going to try to copper plate this pot metal. And it will actually deposit the copper on there, but you can see it just crumbles off. It's not really plating. It just crumbles off into dust. So I read some more, watch YouTube videos, and someplace I read that if to copper plate, you're going to have to do a flash copper, which I don't want to get into. I'll talk about that later. Or you could plate it with nickel before you try to copper plate it. So okay, I set me up a nickel bath, a small one, just to experiment. And so let me talk a little bit about this is a 2 gallons. This is my copper plating tank, and so I set me up a little small nickel plating tank, and I try to nickel plate this pot metal before I copper plate it to see if that'll make it adhere better. However, in the meantime, this window handle, you can see I actually put that in muriatic acid, and I just wanted to see what it would do, and left it in there a long time, and as you can see, it eat holes in this pot metal. But I put it in a copper bath after that, and lo and behold, everywhere where it's not eat through, it did a pretty decent copper plate on it. And I said, well, okay, evidently this area that took the copper must have been the old nickel, and that's where I got the idea. When I'm sandblasting these things down, it looks like I'm only going down to nickel. And so I said, okay, if I'm going down to nickel, let me try and put that directly into my copper bath and see if it'll plate. Well, actually, I said what I'm going to try to do at first was if it's already got that nickel on it, let me see if I can plate nickel over top of it. And that's the handle that's in this bath right now, and it actually plated nickel onto it, but it turned out just almost totally black. I was expecting some kind of shiny finish. Turned out to be just black. It was adhered very well, but it was black. So I read some more, and one of the suggestions was that maybe the voltage was too. I was running at 5 volts, and it looked like maybe a couple hundred milliamps. So anyway, I said, well, okay, before I lower the voltage on this and try, let me take this handle and put it in the copper bath. If that's black looking nickel, and let's see if the copper will adhere to it. So I put it in the copper bath, and sure enough, you get a pretty decent copper coating on it. So, okay, so now it looks like what I've got here is the original nickel with a copper coating on it. And so now let me put it back in the nickel and lower the voltage and see what happens. So that's where we are right now. This handle in this nickel plater over here has been sandblasted down to what I believe is original nickel, with a little copper deposited on top of it, and now it's in the nickel plater again to see if it'll take nickel. I'm running it at about 1.5 volts, and you can hardly see the current on the meter, so I'm not sure what the current level is. However, it is depositing onto it, but it's still, I've pulled it out a couple times and looked at it, and it still looks dark or black to me. So that's where I am. And getting back to the copper strike, evidently if you can put a copper strike onto this pot metal, that will make the acid copper stick. So I've read a lot on the copper strike, and man, I don't want to get into that stuff. That's cyanide based, and when you start reading some of these technical explanations, they come up with 16 other chemicals you can add to it, and I'm just, I don't want to get into that. There's one guy on YouTube that's got a real nice plating setup in his basement, and he was doing the same thing I was. He was trying to save some money, and he goes through his whole layout of what he's got, and at the end he says it ain't worth it. I'll never do this again. So I'm getting to that point very swiftly. We're just gonna have to see. If I don't figure this out pretty soon, an easy, cheap way of doing this, I'm probably in for some major plating expenses. But platers don't like these door handles. They don't like pot metal themselves. And they're going to charge you a fortune. But the other thing about this window knob I'll mention, one of the other things, I had some of this solder that you use to solder pot metal, and So I wanted to try that, and I did. This is a glob of that aluminum alloy, I guess it is, whatever it is, soldered pot metal. I got a great big glob of it on the top of there, and it wouldn't take copper or nickel or anything else. It just, nothing would stick to that. Maybe flash copper would. As far as my plating bath, all you do is I use distilled water. It's 2 gallons of distilled water and this ZEP root killer, which is primarily copper phosphate. Is that right? Is that the right term? Anyway, it's copper, and active ingredients copper sulfate, and yeah, this is 99% copper sulfate. Stir the two up together, and that's your copper bath. And of course you use the copper anodes, and the negative side of the power supply goes to the object you're plating, and it does plate copper. Prove that by this door handle, or this window handle, and it tried to put it on this pot metal, but doesn't adhere very well. So the copper plating thing seems to work pretty good. Nickel plating, it plates. The only problem I've had is it turned out black. So I'm gonna turn the camera off here, and I'm gonna pull this thing out and see what we got. It's been in there probably 30 or 45 minutes, and I'm running it as very low voltage, very low current.